Vice President Kamala Harris today compared last year's events on Capitol Hill to the attack on Pearl Harbor and September 11th. Is that comparison a little extreme? Let's bring in today's company to discuss. The host of the Trish Regan Show and editor-in-chief of TrishIntel.com, Trish Regan, and the editor-in-chief of the National Memo, Joe Conason. Great to see you both. Trish, we've talked about this endless on the show, that what happened on January 6th was despicable. But let's be honest, the goal of the perpetrators on 9/11 was to kill Americans. January 6th was a protest that got out of control. A lot of people did bad things, but I just don't see how you can compare two events where outside people attacked the United States and something like that happened on the Capitol. And again, I'm not minimizing it, but I just don't think that this is the right comparison.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's completely insensitive to the thousands of lives that were lost in both situations. I mean, you're talking about so many people whose lives were affected. It's a very different thing. And again, not to minimize any of this, but you got to keep everything within perspective. And right now, you've got Democrats that are trying to politicize this moment in a massive, frankly, really despicable kind of way. And I think Americans get that. Americans are a little bit tired of this. And when you go out on that kind of limb, Sean, and you compare January 6th to, for example, 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, you really risk your credibility. And so I think that's what's going on. Not that this administration has much in the way of credibility anyway, but people are tired of everything being politicized and the continued division that the Democrats are trying to increase in this country.
I agree. Joe, when asked about the vice president's remarks, this is what White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki had to say.
For those who are being critics of the vice president's remarks, I think instead of focusing on or analyzing comparisons of moments in history, I would suggest that they be a part of solving the threat to democracy that occurs today, that is happening today.
All right, Joe, so here's what I don't understand. If you don't want to make a comparison, that's what she's saying, is then why did they bring it up? They're the ones who brought up the comparison, and then when they're being asked about it, saying, is that a fair comparison, she then says, how dare you criticize us for bringing that up?
Well, I think the vice president was talking about attacks on the United States, and I think many of us regard the assault on the Capitol as an attack on the United States, whether it was of the same scale or amount of bloodshed as 9/11 or Pearl Harbor. That's a matter of political rhetoric. I think it's silly to say that it's politicized. It was a political act. It was an attempt to overturn an election. That's a political act, and it's going to be a political topic, whether people like it or not. It is politics, and it's the most fundamental kind of politics because it involves the defense of democracy. So, you can complain about what the vice president said. I think it would be better to see people taking some responsibility for what happened on January 6th, which people are reluctant to do.
So here's the thing.
It's a terrible moment in our history, and it would be good to see people step up and say, no, this was wrong, and in fact,
but that's the problem.
Played a role
See, here's the thing. So Trish, I asked somebody after the comments this morning, who I don't think is by any means a strong Trump supporter. I said, what did you think? I wanted to get an objective take. And the person said to me, I turned it off. And I said, really? Okay, why? I wanted to understand their perspective. And they said, it was over the top. And that's why I think that Joe's wrong on this. It's like they go over the top and then they go, but don't criticize us.
Yeah, no, with all due respect, Joe, you are wrong on this because you've got to have some sensitivity to the way our nation has always prided itself on having this freedom of speech, right? And in this environment right now, within the context of what's going on, with the Democrats out there saying this is like 9/11, that this is terrorism to the extent that it's on par with something like 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, then we run the risk as a society that any dissent is going to be shut down automatically, right? And we've already seen evidence of that with big tech taking every opportunity it can. And it's all in the name now of January 6th. And unfortunately, my concern right now for our democracy, for our country, is that you've got these political animals out there, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and they are going to use this forever. Okay, that was actually my concern that day. I remember saying, oh my goodness, and I tweeted my hope that the president would pull this in and rein this in for this very reason, because they will try to use this and abuse this for years to come. And that's very threatening to everything that we should be so proud of as a nation. And that's the exercise of our
But Joe, it's funny. A viewer emailed me today and said, the funny thing is, what about JFK being assassinated? What about Reagan being assassinated? That's literally shooting a president of the United States. That would seemingly rank ahead of this.
Well, nobody was assassinated, although there were a lot of people running through the halls of Congress screaming, "Hang Mike Pence." I don't know if you remember that part. They built a gallows outside.
I do.
They said they wanted to kill Nancy Pelosi.
I also remember when Chuck Schumer said, go after Gorsuch. I remember when Maxine Waters said, go after the Trump administration folks and surround them. I remember all of those things, and no one on the left said anything.
Sean, people were, I don't know if that's true or not, but people were killed in the Capitol riot, and they were attempting to kill
Ashley Babbitt. She was
Speaker
killed.
of the House, the Vice President of the United States, and anyone else they could get their hands on. This was a terrorist attack, and none other than Ted Cruz said so. So let's be clear about that.
I think, okay, I'm sorry. We have been very clear on the show that violence is never acceptable, but I think this is exactly the kind of rhetoric that is going to go in the wrong direction. Trish, Joe, thank you guys both very much.